Listen to the vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. I'm very happy to welcome William Yeske here. He has written a book, and it's about his experience in the military. So I'm going to let him tell us a little bit about himself, and we're going to get in talking about his book. So, William, it's all yours, my friend.
Oh boy, give me the floor right off the bat, huh? Well, I mean it's great to be here. It really is. I know we were talking a little bit beforehand, but so I'm almost like at a loss to where to go with it. But yeah, so we have Damn the Valley, a little bit of it's just a snippet of the time and service that I spent from 2009 to 2010 with the 82nd Airborne. Um, there's a little bit more of the deployment in there just due to the circumstances, but a lot of it focuses on the portion that we were in the Arghandab River Valley. And I mean, that's the most extreme part of it. There's a firefight we were in Helmand, and it has to do with the book day release, because the book is being released on Halloween. And it's the first firefight that we were in within Helmand province. Got into a little tick out there. So we were able to finagle it, and Halloween just happened to show up on a Tuesday this year. And guess what? That's book launch day. So we were able to make it happen. It's not just my story in there. That was one of the biggest things with this book is getting the other guys involved. And it started out, the original manuscript that was pushed out, was my story. And that was the quickest way I could put it together. You're going to think I'm nuts when I say this. So I originally wrote this book in 2 weeks. Yes, 60,000 words, banged it out in 2 weeks. My wife was awesome about it. Let me focus on it. My kids, made some sacrifices there, but crushed it out. And I didn't want to be influenced by someone else wrote a book that had not been there. But another Marine, he had seen combat before. Well, a Marine. I wasn't in the Marines. This was Army, so 82nd Airborne. But he'd seen combat before on the Iraq theater side, and he was a professional writer. So there were concerns from some of the guys. Hey, he wasn't there. Hey, is he going to accurately portray it and stuff? And I'm like, guys, like he's a pro and everything. But with keeping that in mind, before I saw anything from his work, I kind of contacted him. I'm like, look, you've interviewed me with that book. What do you think? And he was like, put it down. It deserves to be told. Put down your side. Just your timeline from everything I know and everything is all over the place, and that happens with traumatic events. So you need to figure out a way to get a straight timeline in here. So it's easy to read and it actually follows it. And that's what kind of kicked off after I wrote the manuscript. It was all over the place. But I sent it in. I kind of held myself to the fire, and I sent it in to a few military history publishers. And I was like, hey, this is a nonfiction end. And one of them, Casemate Publishers, they were like, hey, I want to bring this to the round table in 2 weeks. You mind? I'm like, wait, what? I
Wow.
wasn't expecting that. Right. And I'm like, oh, why not? Okay, sure. Thinking, yeah, okay. And 2 weeks later, I get a call, and they're like, hey, you're in. Like, wait, what? Here's an offer. Like, you got to be kidding me. So the other book came out, and that was, I want to say the day the offer came in was, it was either the day before or the day of Veterans Day. It was that morning. It was on Veterans Day. And the news came back, and I couldn't believe it, of course. And there was some concerns because they were like, but we might have to change the title, and we're not sure if we want to use one of your, we might have to do the cover art and stuff. I'm like, guys, I'm telling you, I have this feeling. So the cover is actually a real picture. That was taken on site after a 1,000-pound vehicle IED was set off by the enemy. They drove up to where 2nd Platoon was. So the area where we were, it was so saturated that the commander had to split apart the company into platoon size elements and put his trust into his platoon leaders and platoon sergeants. So everybody, we were a 28-man team on Cop Johnston. Sergeant Frazier, well, Sergeant First Class Frazier was the town of Diakache. They pushed them out to DK for short. And that was where a lot of, that was kind of the epicenter. And that's where we were getting a lot of the action from. And they hadn't been there all that long. And the enemy were like, hey, we're going to exploit this weakness. And they drove a bomb big enough up the road in this car and just ignited it and flattened the compound. Guys buried alive. And there was actually some Afghans that were staying in the backside of the compound, some civilians, and a few of the kids got killed during it. But as they're unearthing everything and they're getting the guys out and they're starting to recover everything out of the compound, one of the guys, a small team of them, it was Brian Erickson, Sergeant, he might have been a specialist at the time, but Sergeant Rodney Garcia, and oh my gosh, I'm trying to think of his name. I can picture him as Rivera. But they found the flag and they're pulling it out. And Garcia grabbed the camera out of one of the guy's hip pouches. He had a camera sitting in his hip pouch and he snatched it up and snapped that picture. And that brought the picture, that we have as the cover. And I'll hold it up for you. And that's what we have, the end result. And between that and putting it all together, I kind of was like, look, let me send you a concept. And it was like the very next day they called me back and they're like, I see it now and I understand. Like, you absolutely have it. And we're gonna push this through. And I mean, the book has pictures. They asked me, and when they put it out there, they're like, do you think you can supply 30 pictures for the book? And without hesitation, I was like, yes, sure, I got you. When in reality, I had nothing.
Oh my gosh.
Zero. And but I knew that if I reached out to the guys, they'd be there, and they were, in droves. They've actually not only supplied the 30 pictures for the book, but that's what I've run the social media campaign. So I mean, you can look on Facebook or Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Damn the Valley Book. It's been going for over 6 months now, daily posts. And that is all the pictures that the guys have been sending in or had sent in. Just an incredible group of guys to have in your corner. It's been awesome.
Did you have any training as a writer, or you just decided, hey, I'm going to do it?
Not anything professional. I know so there was 2 classes in college I took when I left service. I decided to use the GI Bill and go back to school. I knocked out business school in 2.5 years. But during that time, I kind of had there was half a semester that was a wash. It was a dang calculus test. And I took the test, and there was some circumstances behind it to where we were throwing the standardized test at the last minute, and it wasn't the way the teacher had taught the calculus class. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Things were worded different. It just didn't make sense to me. So I didn't take the fail. I said, no, these are your failure points, but this is my end of it. And I contested it, and they granted me a retest. So they had to come up with a fresh test. But the big problem was the professor summered in India. So they were like, she has to give the test, and she came back like a week before the next semester started. So it made I passed the test. I don't think they thought I was gonna, but I passed it. And they're like, well, it's too late to be in the business end of things, so you can't access these classes. They're all full already. Like, you got to be kidding me. So I had half a semester to where I had to fill it up. So I took graphics art, and I took a journalism class, and I took public speaking. I was like, this is stuff I just got a feeling I'm going to need it later. Well, guess what? Here we are, and needed every bit of it. Did some blog postings before on the automotive world, and during school time, wrote a book, never published it. It was kind of, I needed something to pass the time and to unload some of the things I was going through, and never published it, never put it out there, but it's all information on transitioning out of the military into the civilian world, some of the roadmaps to success that you can use as a veteran or, as military crossing over into the, being in the civilian sector as a veteran, and different things that I found helpful uh, along the way. And now I kind of feel like I wrote them backwards. That's probably going to be the next project anyway. But it all happens for a reason. We were talking about this before, and you don't always know, but it's all starting to click. And I'm like, huh, okay. Thank you, universe. I
Right.
appreciate it.
Do you have to get permission from the military to write something like this?
So if you publish as military fiction, which a lot of the stuff that's out there these days is,
Hmm.
um, and you can tell the difference. Some of it is touted as, and maybe it is. Maybe these events really did happen, but they never went through that vetting process that the DoD does. And that was one of the things that once I geared it up and once this became something where I was involving the other guys and they had all voiced, hey, we want an accurate representation, like a historical representation of what happened over there. That's when I really pushed myself to, all right, so we're gonna go the distance. We are gonna do this as a nonfiction book. We are gonna get it DoD approved. We're gonna get it into the Library of Congress. And that's exactly what I did. All those steps have been taken along the way. So it is a nonfiction book, and it's the closest, most accurate you're going to get to the story over there. And I say that because in moments of trauma, everybody experiences trauma differently. And everybody, if you have 100 people witness a traumatic event, there's going to be 100 different stories. Every single one of them is going to be right because that's the perception of that particular person that was there. So, I mean, I ran into that with this book. So trying to triangulate and catching it from different angles. There was one instance in particular to where there was only one person there that would have known because an IED went off and he got blown over the wall with one of the casualties. And he was the only guy over there for about 5 minutes, or at least what seemed like 5 minutes. It actually seemed probably closer to 10, but in reality, it was probably only 2. Um, and that was actually Specialist Will Ross, and he got blown over the wall with Specialist Jason Johnston, who took the brunt of the IED, and it was a mass cal incident to where it was really meant to be a squad killer IED, and he was directly on top of the charge when it went off. And a lot of guys wonder, why and everything. And if you look at it in a different way, if you reframe it, if he hadn't have been there, a lot of the other guys in the squad would be dead or severely injured. So it's very possible that, Johnston really did save lives right there without realizing it. But Will was over the wall with him and was the one who initially started, the process of trying to treat the casualty, completely alone on the other side of the wall as, we're trying to determine a lot of the squad is back in there, and the squad leader's trying to get security back up, and he'd been thrown backwards and knocked out. The doc that was with us, he had a bunch of dirt and shrapnel and stuff in his face. Adam Volker, one of the gunners, he was actually medevaced when the birds came in and stuff, but everybody got rocked pretty good. Except for myself, which was really weird. I was on the other end of the compound watching them come in, and I saw it, the initial go off, and I saw the shockwave cross the grass. And, when the dirt and stuff washed over me, and that's when the realization happened, and I called it up and said, hey, I had the radio at the time. Hey, we just hit an IED. I don't know how bad this is, but I'll get back to you on casualties, spin it up. And I got off. And that's when, everything started kicking off in that particular instance. And trying to make sense of everything and trying to pull the different views in order to recreate, that type of instance and give an accurate picture, but also be respectful of um, some of those extreme instances in there. Uh, it's it's gritty. It gets down into it. But at the same time, in facing some of that again, you have to. I do worry sometimes with some of what's written in there,
Mhm.
and I have actually brought it out with psychologists and stuff, and been like, what are the implications here and stuff. I don't want anything to happen to anybody based on this book, and everything. And it's really just some of these guys face this stuff every day in their head and all that. And really, some of it is a cry for help. So, I mean, don't stop there if you're reading it, and go forward and see there is a solution, or at least the way forward anyway. And it has to do with, keeping in touch with your friends and talking about these instances and sharing these stories among one another, because a lot of the other combat veterans out there and stuff, they're the only ones that have experienced this end. So it's important because they can relate to it, and they can uh, have that resonance with that other person, and maybe even get them to seek some help. I mean, like, hey man, I've been through this before too, and this is what worked for me.
Did some of these guys have survivor's guilt?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't have survivor's guilt, but that instance in particular, I had stepped right over the landmine that initiated that one, not even 30 seconds prior. Yeah. It's really, there was one point where we were over there, and I remember because we were leaving to go on a patrol out of Cop Johnston. And I was thinking to myself, who's it going to be today? Is it going to be you? Is it going to be in the front of the patrol, the back? And I stopped myself and I said, whoa, hey man, that doesn't matter. You're already dead. You just have to look at it and say, this is your job. How can you do your job best in order to keep everyone else alive until you can't anymore? And that's how you have to do it. You have to take yourself and put yourself aside, because you have a job to do out there, and you can't think about that other end. You can't think about yourself.
We had a great talk before we started the interview, and we had talked about how even though you got civilians that have never experienced what y'all have experienced, doesn't mean that they don't go through something that's similarly devastating to them.
Yeah.
Do you think they're going to find inspiration in this book?
I think that if someone can read this book and see that some of these guys, what they've been through, and they're able, I mean, some of them are highly successful people. Some of them have really taken those instances and been like, hey, I can do anything. Um, I've done stuff myself. I mean, business school in 2.5 years is no joke. And then I went on to do some stuff with Cornell, and then Columbia Business School. I just finished up with them. Um, so if I'm a so-called broken war vet, then what does that mean? It's when we were talking about you're right. Someone's worst day is quite that. It's their worst day of their life. And if it's getting blown up and being in a minefield, and, having people die in front of you, or having to face death on a day-to-day basis, and having that hypervigilance, having to deal with that and learn mechanisms in order to slow it down. Because I mean, it's a lot of us work on a different, that switch sometimes is turned on, and that's it. And you could use it, but you also have to be aware that, hey, that's in the background there. But I think with some of this, it all translates. Even if you haven't been there and haven't done those sort of things, there's lessons in there. And there's a one towards the end where I talk about my own issues, to where there was a lot of things that just weren't going right. Um, I just didn't care anymore. It wasn't that I was trying to end my life, but when you're headed home at 120 miles an hour on a back road, um, at night in North Carolina in wooded areas where deer pop out every so often. I don't care who you are, what I used to professionally race cars. That's something I didn't mention before too. But if you have that kind of training behind you, it doesn't matter. You're not going to stop every instance and stuff. You're going to stuff that thing into the trees. And I almost did actually at one point. There was I was tooling around the road and didn't really care, and some kid was following me, and we were coming up on a 90-degree sweeper, and I was like, he doesn't, I could tell from the way he was driving. I'm like, he doesn't have this. So I slowed down. I was like, he's behind me. There's no way. And he burned around me. He flew around me in this little Nissan 350. And as soon as he went around me, I knew what was happening. And his car, the tires, he didn't have it set up right at all. It was too low to the ground. And thank God he had a roll cage in that thing. Because that thing was he came around me and his tires never regained traction. He just spun right off into the woods, hit trees on one side, pinged off like a pinball, flew over to the other side, and took out two more trees before the car came to a stop. And I actually have the pictures of it up on the social media. And I pulled him out. I kind of stopped my car and pulled him out. And he was unconscious, slumped over it, and his car was still running, even though it was spraying, gas and antifreeze everywhere and oils just all over the place. And I pulled the keys out and stopped the car from running at least, and started pulling him out of he had a harness on in the cage, which is, again, that's the only thing that saved him. Because if you see where it hit on the B pillar, where that tree hit, it squished the car in right up to where the cage was. So you could see the car is like almost folded in half. And if that cage hadn't been there, that thing would have he would have been cut in half too. It would have been a really bad scene to be on. And I kind of realized at that point, okay, buddy, it's not just you're affecting. There's others involved too. You just don't see it. And, that was when I first started seeking help on that end of things.
Well, I know there's a seriousness to the book, but is there some humor in the book?
You can't have the extreme instances on that end without some of the funny stuff. I mean, you have everything from cutting locks of freezer Connexes to steal a tub of Ben and Jerry's. There's a 5-gallon tub of Ben and Jerry's ice cream that we took out of there. This freezer Connex showed up in I want to say the last 2 months we were there. And the cook locked up that particular Connex because he knew, I mean, it's a bunch of infantry guys. And some Seabees had come out. That was the whole reason this thing was there, was the Seabees came out and they were just like, I can't believe you guys are living like this. Like, there's no showers. When is the last time you guys clean your clothes? So they sent in all this stuff. They sent in a shower trailer. There was one point we hadn't had showers for 3 months.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, it was, yeah. It's bad when the stench gets real bad, but then it goes away and you're like, oh, okay, we've kind of acclimated to it, but then it comes back. And then you're like, oh, this is bad. If your body's even telling you like, hey man, like, I can't even ignore this anymore. You got rashes up your body and everything else. So these guys really saved us. They threw out some of the comforts we've been missing forever. And this cook who didn't, we didn't take him on any of this patrols with us. He actually begged us a few times to go. He's, I can get in there. I know what I'm doing. And we're like, you don't want none of this, buddy. You're good. Stay on the cop. You know how to operate that mobile kitchen. You just do you. And but yeah, he locked it up, and we went out, myself and weapon squad, cut it one night and stole a big old 5-gallon of, I think it was cookies and cream, but we were sick as dogs after that. But you had that. And I know there was an instance, just funny moments in combat where you can find the funniest thing out of anything. And There's one where we were coming into a field and there was two guys, there was tarps laid out and they were shaving themselves on over the tarps. There was a bunch of detonators and homemade explosives. And what they do is they're suicide bombers. That's what they do beforehand. They prepare their body, um, basically before they go in kamikaze in one way or another using themselves. And we caught them by surprise and they grabbed up their AKs and they started shooting at us. And, we go to assault, we're getting shot at. And you never know what someone's going to do in that instance until it happens. And we had one guy, everyone's basically getting online, doing what they're trained to do, returning fire. And there's this one kid just being the other way, just running away, just out of instinct. I don't know. And that team leader grabs him by the drag handle and just get over here. And he throws him up on the line with the other guys. Afterwards, after everything was said and done and the dust settles and whatnot, and we were going through the cache and we actually found, it was like 50 something detonators, and things slowed down a bit after that. So, it was a good find. But afterwards the guys were equating it to that game in Mortal Kombat where Scorpion, get
over here.
He spears the guy and pulls him in. It's just so things like that, it's just you can find humor anywhere. It's just all how you look at it. And those guys just got a kick out of you can laugh about just about anything.
Well, imagine y'all probably had a lot of practical jokes.
Oh, there was a few. I tried to stay away from that end because once you go down that end, they had a game they would play called Kibosh. This is a good one. So if you were in the game, you were in the game. That was it. There's no going back. And the premise of the game is it didn't matter. Rank didn't matter. All right. You had to be respectful about it. But let's say you had a candy bar sent to you. All right. But it was free game to kibosh it. If it wasn't yours, someone was unwrapping it or something and you noticed them, you could come by and slap it out of their hands into the dirt. And you yell kibosh when you do it. Because some of that stuff you think about, like a can of dip. You're not getting another can of Copenhagen while you're out in the desert like that. And I saw, big dudes reduced to tears over some of this stuff. Like it was like they put their entire, their little happiness around, maybe something like a Monster Energy drink that someone sent them from back home. And they're going to just enjoy this one little bit of a sliver of light, in the darkness we were in, and they get kiboshed. And the whole deal was you couldn't reciprocate, you wanted to, there's some guys that almost got into a knockdown drag out over it, but you had to remember that your time was coming back around, and it just got out of hand at one point to where I want no part of this. I never joined in on it. I'm so glad I didn't, because it got brutal.
Do you have a website?
Yeah, there's so you can actually go and get author signed copies at damnthevalleybook.com. But there's all the links to Barnes and Noble, Amazon. I try to support the independent bookstores. I know you're down in Texas there, and Book People is actually picking it up too. So it should be down there. And I say support your independent stores first. If you can. I know it's so convenient just to click on Amazon, but they're kind of disappearing, and they're important too. They're important to be out there. They're the ones supporting the authors and trying to get the word out there. So I have stuff up on there, up on the website where you can get it at some of the local places that I've been in touch with. And, for anybody that's out there too, if you want it in your local bookstore or your library, tell them the ISBN. Ingram is the distributor, so you can get it globally.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I know it was an afterthought, but one of the neat things by the author signed copies, what I'm trying to do there is I'm trying to get, it's what was there like 120 some odd guys that were out there with us. So I'm trying to get 120 some odd copies um, paid for and out to those guys. So I'm doing I kind of feel like, hey, if you ask someone to somebody, you got to provide value in return. So I'm like, okay, how can I do this? I'm like, oh, I can take these author signed copies and I can usually for every single book almost provide an additional copy for a guy. So if I sell 125 author signed copies, I can get those 125 books out to the guys, and anything left over or anything that's purchased additionally. Um, there's a follow on event down in Fayetteville, North Carolina at the Airborne and Special Operations Museum that the flag from the cover picture was actually recovered, and we're doing a dedication, and they're doing an event down there where I'm gonna come and speak for an hour and then sign some books and stuff. But I mean, everybody is welcome to come down. It's open to the public, and that's on November 11th. But yeah, I'm trying to provide for those guys, get them down there if I can, because I know to a lot of them it means something special.
You mentioned social media earlier. What all social media are you on?
So you can find me at Damn the Valley Book on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. There's probably going to be some additional stuff down the road, but for right now, those are the main channels that you should be able to get anything you want off those. But I try to put up content daily. And again, that's all the pictures that the guys have been sending in. And I try to keep everybody updated as to what's going on with the book.
Well, I will put all the links in the description to make it easy for everyone to find you and get the book. But William, man, I thank you so much for coming on and sharing your time with me today.
No, thanks for having me. It's been a blast. I appreciate it.
Well,
Thank you.
the next project, you got to come back.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, seriously, if I'm down that way, I'd love to meet up.
For sure, man, for sure. And I also want to thank all you folks out there. If you are new to the channel, well, I hope you'll come back. Hit that subscribe button for my regulars. You guys are awesome because you make it possible for me to do this. Until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favourite podcasts. And on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network